Okay. Those of you watching on YouTube, sorry, it's taking a second. I'm just waiting for Instagram to get ready here. Okay. So this is a topic I wanted to share with you all because I think you'll find it's a neat process. Those of you who are new, I talk all about masculine and feminine energies. When I talk about masculine and feminine energy, I'm not talking about gender or personality. I'm using masculine and feminine energy to describe two different states of being, two different categories. And I have created this model that I call the staircase model because it looks like a staircase. Okay. And it visualizes this relationship between the masculine and the feminine. Here, masculine is represented by the gold, feminine by the blue. Okay. And what we're going to be looking at is how anytime we're wanting to find more balance in our life, we're usually perceiving it occurring because this thing over here was wonderful and working, and all of a sudden it's not. And I don't know why it's not working anymore, right? And that causes this natural swing that has occurred. And that's usually how we perceive it, as like things are falling apart in my house. Things are not working correctly anymore. I used to have it all figured out and it was all going really well. And now I don't know what I'm doing and I don't know what to think and believe or do or why this is happening, right? That's kind of the view we have. And when we go to this extreme place, we tend to want to try and figure out how we can get back to when things were good. Secret for you. We can't go backwards ever, which then makes it difficult to be like, what? I can have an imbalanced day and then like figure it out again. Yes, you can, but it is always in a forward moving pattern. And that is what this model is all about, is to help you understand how we can always continually be progressing and moving forward. One of the simplest ways to think about it is in terms of like a 3-act play, right? Act 1, in any time we have growth or change or expansion or evolution or just difference, right? Something different occurring. That first act requires stepping away from the masculine. Right? The purpose of the masculine in the early stages is meant to be kind of compensating for the lack of imbalance between the masculine and feminine. Right? Masculine and feminine are meant to be in this balanced state, but when they get out of whack, sometimes we have to rely on the masculine a little bit more. So what I mean by that in terms of like, if it's your home, we don't have a good rhythm and balance between getting all of the laundry done, having a scheduled routine for it, but also having the freedom and flexibility to not feel like you're beholden to, I have to get laundry done all the time, otherwise the house falls apart, right? We want that balance and rhythm between the two. But when you're still developing that muscle, you might need to rely on that initial masculine support until you're ready to start bringing in some of that feminine. Right? What's really interesting is when we look at this in terms of the church, right? Because that initial kind of masculine crutch is church culture and church gospel. Well, more the culture, right? Basically saying, here's the things that you should do, go and do them, right? That is a little bit of a crutch for our own spiritual development and connection, right? So that first act, we have this masculine energy in place, but it's more compensating for our imbalance in the feminine that is occurring. And in order to move into act 2, we have to step away from that masculine crutch and start finding the feminine. Right? The feminine is act 2. This is where we start discovering more of that internal motivation, that internal desire, that personal connection, that spiritual relationship, right? Where it's more meaningful. We're doing things because we have this internal desire to do it rather than I have to do it because there's all these external things that are making me want to do it, right? Whether we're talking about the laundry or church or anything else. Okay. So that second phase is reconnecting with the feminine. And then the third act is now we reintroduce the masculine back into this experience, but it's from a different place, right? It may at times mirror or look like it's the same as Act 1 when we had this relationship with the masculine, but it's actually very different. Because what happens in that Act 2 is that internalization occurs. And so now, by the time we're having any masculine energy active in Act 3, it's because we want it there, because it is supporting our internal desires, because it is in alignment with the things that we want and who we are. Whereas before, it was more there again as compensation because we didn't have our own internal drive yet, right? We're never meant to stay in Act 1 though. We're always meant to progress into this seeking out the feminine and then return back to this reintroduction of the masculine, right? This even occurs when you're thinking about managing your time, right? Or starting a business or doing something creative, right? There is a time where it's like, okay, I need to have this more masculine structured piece in place, but then I have to step away from that for a minute to figure out and brainstorm, what are all the ways I want to spend my time today? What are the things I want to be doing this week? And then I can reschedule them into my week and my plan. Right? Or I had to step away from this masculine for a minute to get creative and think about what is the next product I want to create? What is the next program I want to do? And then I re-step into the masculine of taking the action and doing the things to get it done. And from that perspective, it becomes the feminine inspired action, right? Whereas from this space, it is action helping point us towards inspiration and helping us move forward. Okay. When we're looking at this more in context of a faith transition or trying to navigate one, this jump right here, the leaving of the masculine and moving to this internal centered own spiritual authority, it's again very much a natural part of this process. The piece of it is people try to reintroduce the masculine again too quickly. And one of the key things that makes this reintroduction seem almost impossible is lack of healing, right? Oftentimes we leave the masculine because it doesn't feel good anymore. It is uncomfortable. We don't like it. Something bad happens in our life or our world or experience that kind of pushes us on this journey to seeking out that internal place, right? The thing is that running away from something doesn't work when we're trying to go from phase Act 2 to Act 3. The movement from Act 2 to Act 3 has to be a choice, has to be internally driven. And if we haven't done our work to process some of the trauma that can be created in that jump from Act 1 to Act 2, going from Act 2 to Act 3 is not going to be perceived as progressing. It's going to be perceived as going back to Act 1 and the hurt and the difficult and the pain that was felt there, right? So part of this is learning how do we move to the different acts without experiencing as much trauma, right? Doing it more through the lens of, oh, this is part of the process and it's unfolding and I'm moving through this, right? Usually none of us can do that the first time through though, because we're already alive and most of us are already adults who have been living for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years. And we have this big backlog of experiences where it wasn't us gracefully, positively supported moving through this experience. And so instead, we've got a backlog of trauma and processing and healing that needs to take place. Right? You can tell which stage of the 3 you are in based off of how you are feeling. Right? If you're in phase 1, making your transition to phase 2, you're going to start feeling like a little discomfort, maybe some disillusionment. You might be starting to question some things. You might be noticing stuff. And it's like, how did I not notice this before? Why did I never pay attention to this? Why did I never think of that before? Right? It's because you've shifted enough so that you're in this new state. You are no longer in the stable point before where it felt aligned and was meeting your needs and what you wanted. You have grown and progressed and you are ready for something more. And that is why you're in this new space. And it's like, what's going on? I don't like this anymore. I want to move somewhere else. I don't know where to go. I don't know what direction to take, right? This is a lot of people who feel that feeling of like the church and going there feels kind of empty. I don't get spiritually fed anymore. It feels a little bit dead and hollow and meaningless. Well, yeah, that's because it's prepared you and you're ready now to move to stage 2. Stage 2 is where you create that internal personal spiritual connection, right? It is no longer coming from this external compensation of the masculine space. You now get to start developing that yourself, right? We're becoming more of this agents unto ourselves, right? Recognizing, what do I think? What do I feel? What do I believe? What do I want? What? Right? And that can be a very confusing space to be in, because usually we're trying to do act 2 and act 3 at the same time. And maybe even act 1, right? All of it at the same time. We're like having this disillusionment and these new ideas and this discomfort, simultaneously trying to tap into our power and ourselves while also trying to reconcile it with what's already there and return it, right? Instead of just acknowledging, oh, I'm in act 1 right now. It's okay. I'm in act 2 now. I'm really connecting with the feminine. It's okay that I'm not focusing on these other things right now because I'm focused on act 2. And then only move to act 3 when you feel moved to do so, right? We tend to try and force people into act 3 a lot quicker, usually because we're afraid that they have left act 1, because act 1 and act 3 can look very similar to each other. And so there can be this appearance once you've moved fully through a cycle that you just restored what went wrong, that dropping into the feminine space is wrong, that it's dangerous, that it's bad, that it's taking away from this act 1 balanced state. It's not, right? It is part of the process. It is part of the unfolding. And in fact, we would have a much easier time with act 3 and the reunification with the masculine if we didn't reject the movement from act 1 to act 2 and that feminine, and we recognized it and we acknowledged, oh, this is a part of the process. Then there's not so much of this trauma and mistrust that's happening, and we can more easily move into act 3. Okay, you can recognize if you're in act 2, because especially in the beginning, it's like a whole new world, right? It's so wonderful. I love it here. I feel alive and I feel like I'm finding things that feed my soul and the connection. And this is what I wanted and what I was searching for and that I couldn't find over here anymore. And suddenly it's here and it's exciting and wonderful, right? And as you're here for a while, it's like, okay, feeling good about this, but like, now I also want more, right? I'm ready to start reintroducing this. I want to start playing with these ideas. How does what I have learned here reconnect with what I knew before? How can I expand upon that, right? It is never about replacing or removing. We can't replace or remove parts of who we are, parts of our past, right? We can only expand upon them, make them something more than what they previously were. And that's the whole point of the jump from act 2 to act 3. Now, some people, when they reintroduce the masculine, that means they are not returning back to that original space, right? In terms of a faith journey, that might mean leaving the church, right? Might mean not continuing to practice. However, there's a key distinguishing between that happening in act 3 and it still being a part of act 2, right? And here's the key piece that you'll notice. When you are in act 3, and that is the aligned decision, you should be able to interact with the masculine and not get triggered. not have a problem, not feel like, oh my gosh, what is going on? I can't stand this. I can't be around this, right? If you're still getting triggered by the masculine, you're actually still in Act 2. You haven't fully reconciled with the masculine yet. And maybe part of your Act 2 journey required removing yourself from the masculine, stepping away, getting really immersed in that feminine space, right? But Act 3, the hallmark of that reunification, of that new balance set point, you don't have that trigger anymore, right? You are at peace, you are comfortable, and like in a genuine, full way, right? We start bridging that gap a little bit when it's like, yeah, I want people to be able to think what they think and believe what they believe. And it doesn't have to be the same as me, right? We start finding that place in Act 2, but your triggers are always going to be pointing you to where you still have some work to be doing in Act 2 and where you're not fully yet grounded in Act 3. Act 3 is balanced and beautiful because there isn't that trigger. We feel settled, we feel secure, we feel comfortable, we feel confident, we feel at peace, right? That doesn't mean that we sit around and be like, the world is perfect and nothing needs to change, nobody needs to change, and everything is right. No, we can still recognize like areas for improvement and growth and things that aren't quite right and don't sit well with us. But there's a difference between feeling like your internal who you are essence is dependent upon that external thing being different and changing and improving and fixing versus feeling like I'm good and there's room for more, right? It's the power of and there. And is very much encompassed in this Act 2 to Act 3 experience here. Okay? So those are a couple of ways to kind of pinpoint where you are in your journey. Unfortunately, it is also a multifaceted experience, right? So the largest part of us may be, hanging out in Act 2, while smaller bits of our life, different areas, different topics, different experiences, we might be a little bit in Act 1, and another space we're a little bit more in Act 3, and we're still having lots of these different experiences in different places of our lives, right? It's not as clear cut and easy as, oh, now you're in Act 1. Oh, now you're completely in Act 2. Oh, now you're completely in Act 3, right? There's a little bit of that shift that takes place. And again, depending upon what part of your life or how you move through it, but paying attention to that overall expression. That's the one that's kind of the average of all of the other life experiences. Another way to think about this is in terms of relationship, right? There are lots of different relationships that you have going on. You have a relationship with your spouse as a spouse. You have a relationship with your spouse as a parent. You have a relationship with your parents as a daughter or son. You have a relationship with your parents as two adults, right? There are lots of these different relationships that we have, and they're kind of all the little pieces. And then the average overall is our relationship with ourselves and our relationship with God. And that key one overall is what we're going to see shifting and noticing where it is. Right? So hopefully this gives you a few ideas. If you want to learn more about these different stages, how to navigate through them, how to make it more of like, oh, this is part of the process instead of like, what is happening? It's fine. It's fine. I don't know if it's ever going to be fine again, but this is where I am. So I'm dealing, right? That doesn't have to be your experience. I'm opening up my new group program officially. Enrollment is open this week. I've been talking about it for about a month, getting all the pieces right, trying to understand exactly what this resource needed to be, who it was meant to be for. A little weird language there. But the rising feminine is all about this experience, right? The rise is really that move from Act 2 to Act 3. It's one of the stages here in my model, if you watch some of my other videos, but it's a key piece because that is where we take this connection to ourselves, we internalize it, and we learn to act upon it. There's a lot of programs, a lot of resources out there for these different acts that we experience, but very few, if any, that encompass the whole thing, right? And that's what this program is going to be about, is helping you learn the whole journey, helping walk you through all of the pieces so that you're not just stuck forever in this phase of like, things are falling apart. I don't really know how to fall apart. I'm just doing my best to feel the feelings and process what comes up and just let it be. And it's okay. Right. And then we're here in Act 2, and it's like, oh my gosh, there's so many new things, and I'm connecting with myself, and I'm learning what it means to be feminine and who I am, right? Having these deeper relationships with my body and the things that I want. And right, that's this piece, that awaken piece. But that final piece, how do you bring back in a relationship with the masculine? How do you step into bringing all these good, wonderful things you've learned into the rest of your life, into the rest of your relationships and experiences? Because you're not just a single person, right? You are a person who is connected to an entire world of people. You're a person connected to a community and family structures and relationship dynamics of friends and colleagues and coworkers and spouses and children, right? And sometimes we feel like those have to be two separate things. They don't. That is what Mastering the Rise and Act 3 is all about. That you don't have to be living a secret life behind your rest of your life, right? We can bring your secret life up here. You can be whole and one and in alignment. That is what the reunification is all about. That is what this program is going to be teaching you. It's 3 months long. So we take you through each of the different acts. We talk about the different energies. We talk about what to expect, how to process them, right? That first act is really going to be about language, learning how to describe these processes, learning to understand this model, learning to get that big picture map. Then in that map, right, that is our masculine structure that's going to help guide us throughout this process. But then we're going to step away from that for a little bit. And then in month 2, we're going to learn how to self-regulate, right? Really get in touch with who you are, understanding your mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical regulation. There are 4 different skills, and you need to know how to regulate on all 4 levels at different times to have the most balanced experience in your everyday life, no matter what's going on in the external world, right? So that's Act 2. We're getting really in touch with you and how to navigate and show up wholly. And we bring it all together in month 3. You step into your power, right? We learn how to take this new language, how to take these new skills, mold them together so you can start showing up in your life, knowing your power, knowing your purpose, feeling confident and comfortable in it, strengthening all of your relationships, knowing when to dig in, when to pull back, all of the nuance, right? It's going to be a fabulous program. Right now, there are 10 spots open. I have about 5 left, I think. Maybe. Don't quote me on that. But they're filling up. That's the point I'm trying to make here, right? So if this is speaking to you and you're sitting here going, this is what I've been looking for. This is the thing I need. Right in here, it's pulling at you. Head to my website. There's a link to an application. It's got more details and description there. And then you can fill out the application to be able to see if this would be a good fit for you and go ahead and sign up. The reason I have the application there is really for me to just get to know you, get to know where you are in this process. If you're hanging out here in Act 3, may not be the program for you, maybe a waste of your time, right? If you're really needing a lot of support in just Act 2, this might be too much. You might need an Act 2 program, right? If you're just starting out, this could be an awesome experience for you because you can move through all of it. That being said, don't be so quick to count yourself out and be like, I don't know if this is for me. The beauty is that map and that internal compass that we do in months 1 and 2 really are applicable to all 3 of them. Don't stress about your answers. Show up as yourself. It's meant to be a safe space. And that's really what I'm looking for, is calling in the people who are ready for this work, who it will benefit and be a good thing in your life. I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste your money. I don't want to waste your energy, right? The people who are like, this is what I need. That's all I'm trying to find, right? Your spirit knows, your soul knows. It's going to be screaming at you if this is meant to be for you. So go check that out and stay tuned this week because we're going to be talking more about these 3 acts and navigating them because it's showing up in just about every system in our world right now. Pretty soon, you are not going to be able to escape this process. You're going to be showing up on one side of it or another. So you might as well learn how to enjoy the ride. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Take care. Oh, nope. The live stream didn't end on YouTube. Now it is ending.